ranking the top 10 tight ends for the 2025 NFL Draft. Michigan's Colston Loveland and Penn State's Tyler Warren has been battling it out for the top spot, but we're going to tell you why Colston Loveland has the number one spot. That and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. I'm my offensive draft analyst over at Bleacher Report. That's my guy, Keith Sanchez. He is the director of scouting with the Draft Network and 2019 national champion with those LSU Tigers. And as always, guys, thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everyday as we have a fun one. We're breaking down the top 10 tight ends of the 2025 NFL Draft. Who's going to win the battle for tight end one? Is it going to be Tyler Warren out of Penn State, or is it going to be Colston Loveland out of Michigan? We're going to have that discussion. We're going to talk about those tier 2 tight ends and those tier 3 tight ends to close out our top 10 rankings. But before that, guys, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 back in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Keith, there is a battle for tight end one for the draft community, and it seems like, Keith, you tell me if you've seen it. It feels like the pendulum is swinging a little bit, Keith, because to start this draft cycle after the season, or even during the season, it's all Tyler Warren's been tight end one. The 6'5", 255-pound tight end from Penn State's been tight end one. But as of late, you've seen quotes from anonymous agent, not agent, but scouts, and like talking about how some teams are split and some teams have Tyler Warren as one and some other teams have Colston Loveland as one. Keith, in our top 10 list, for our top 10 list, rather, we both have Colston Loveland as tight end one. Tell the people, for you, what separates these two tight ends and why you have Colston Loveland over Tyler Warren.
Yeah, I think it's 2 words: athletic ability. And you see that Colston Loveland is the more fluid mover. He's the more versatile guy. And I think one part of his game that I'm confused by is the blocking part. Like, everybody loves Tyler Warren because they feel like he can block, but I've never seen a horrible rep. So let's rewind this. First of all, there are minimal elite blocking tight ends, right? Okay, let's set the bar there, right? Secondly, when I watch Colston Loveland, I see him on par with the better blocking tight ends in the NFL, right? As far as his blocking ability, I can't walk away from that and say that Tyler Warren is for sure the better blocker. But I can say this, that when you're talking about potentially winning one-on-one situations, I see more athletic ability inside of Colston Loveland to be able to win one-on-ones than a Tyler Warren. I think Tyler Warren is really good. This is what's going on with the conversation, DP, is that people are actually starting to watch film now, and that's why you have to be careful of the people that's just tweeting the tweet, right? There are some people that tweet, then they're trying to get more likes and follows, and there's some people that tweet because they've already done the work and they actually watched the film and they're giving you their real thoughts on this, right? So that's why you have to be careful with this process. And what's happening is people actually going back and watching the film and not just checking the stats, because what happened during the season, Tyler Warren is going 10 catches, 11 catches, 10 catches, 9 catches, 40 yards rushing, 50 yards rushing, wildcat. And so he's winning the headlines because he has more production and his team was better, right? Penn State, they made the run with the Big Ten championship into the playoffs, won the first round of the playoffs, things like that. Colston Loveland is kind of out of sight, out of mind because Michigan is bad. So everybody just kind of threw the whole situation away that if Michigan bad, must be Colston Loveland is bad, which is a ridiculous way to think. But I think that's what's happening now, DP. That was I know I came in hot right off to the top, but it's just certain things I see that just kind of, I'm like, we have to stop doing this, right? But that's why Colston Loveland is tight end one for me. And that's not saying anything against Tyler Warren. I think Tyler Warren is a very talented tight end. You just asked me what kind of leans the pendulum, swings the pendulum just a little bit more for Colston Loveland to me. It's the athletic ability that I see on film. I think Tyler Warren is a good football player, and I think he will be really productive in the NFL.
No, 100%. I'm with you. Because I tweeted that out this weekend because I was kind of like, I've been doing the breakdown on my YouTube channel for Colston Loveland. I'm watching, and I'm like, where did this notion that he doesn't block come from? Like, who started this narrative that he's a bad blocker? Now, what I will say is, yes, he's a lean, like 240 pound, he's 6'6", 240. So you say, okay, as an NFL team, can we get you to 250, 252 without sacrificing your athletic ability? Potentially. He has a frame that I don't think it's fully maxed out, that you can absolutely add more muscle and more mass to his frame to help him with the strain and running his feet at the point of attack. But I'm watching him seal off edge rushers. I'm watching him climb up to the outside linebackers, picking off safeties and corners. I'm watching him climb off from an inline tight end position all the way to the middle of the field and picking off the middle linebacker on the power concept, because they got the running back running outside with 2 lead off of a pin and pull concept. I'm like, wait, what are we talking about when it comes on the Colston Loveland and the not blocking thing? I'm like, yes, you may do. Am I saying I want Colston Loveland blocking Myles Garrett? No. Do I want Tyler Warren blocking Myles Garrett? No. I don't want either one of them blocking Myles Garrett, if I'm being completely honest. But
I mean, because
go ahead.
Yeah, all you have to do is pay attention to the NFL games, right? The minute there's a tight end on an edge rusher and then the edge rusher makes the play, what did the announcer say? Oh, that's a bad matchup. You just don't do that, right? And even at LSU, the DP, it didn't matter who it was. There were minimal times that we wanted a tight end on a defensive lineman. Point blank period. We always said bigs block bigs, smalls block smalls, right? And that's how you want it to go. And I get it.
At least not one-on-one. Like,
yeah,
duo, cool,
100%.
Yeah, not one-on-one.
Yeah, or if you want them to get in the way, or if they cutting off, if they're doing cutoff blocks, cutting off backside, things like that, right? To give you a +1 advantage in some situation. But no, like, you're not, like, if you want to block, like, draft offensive tackle, right? Like, if that's what you need somebody to block your edge rusher, draft offensive tackle. That's
Jackson Hawes from Georgia Tech on day 3. Like, he'll absolutely come in and battle at the point of attack for you. But I think with Colston Loveland, I think for me is the thing that separates them as pass catchers. I think Tyler Warren's a better guy after the catch. He's got a little bit more nimbleness to him. He can kind of create, a little bit more creativity with the ball in his hands. And of course, he runs with a very angry mindset with the ball in his hands. Right? Like, he wants to. He's an angry runner in that situation. But it's before the catch, whereas like these are two totally different guys. Where we talk about Brock Bowers was not 6'6" or 6'5", 255. He was like 6'3", 230. You know what I mean? Yep. And it's all about the pass catching ability. And I'm watching Colston Loveland because I remember someone's like, yeah, I get more versatility out of Tyler Warren. And I'm like, I don't think so. Like, not from a route running standpoint, you don't.
Yeah, and the thing is that, and this is, I think we had this conversation, right? Like, it kind of goes back to the Treylon Burks conversation, and I am not comparing their career arc.
It's the manufactured touches.
Yeah, it's the manufactured touches thing, is that Tyler Warren, and what you're looking at in the versatility is the fact that, Penn State use them in the Wildcat. They do, they may give them jet handoffs and things like that. You have to ask yourself, is every NFL team going to do the same thing with him? No. And we know that that's not going to happen. Now, he may get to a situation where the offensive coordinator does that, but there may be a situation when he goes where they're like, no, that, like, the offensive coordinator is like, that makes no sense to put my tight end in the Wildcat because I could just use my running back.
That's not our offense. That's what's going to be said. Yeah. This is not our offense.
That's not our offense. Run it differently 100%. Here. So that won't necessarily 100% translate. So you have to be careful with those type of situations, right? You have to ask, like, universally, what is the tight end going to be asked to do, and then kind of go from there and kind of adjust from that point. Yep.
That's the difference for me between those two. I watch, like, the amount of times Colston Loveland is wide open in that Michigan offense and doesn't get the football is insane. Like, I caught myself yelling, throw the ball, while I was watching the film, because I'm like, he's wide open. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And you see him, I think it was against Oregon. They're running cover 0. He's matched up one-on-one with the safety. It's 2nd and 14. He picks up the first down on like a kind of almost a skinny post in the sense against one-on-one coverage, right? So you think about him being 6'6", 240 with the route running, the smoothness out of his breaks, the fluidness of his hips, and then the catch radius as well. He similar to Tyler Warren. I think Tyler Warren is more physical at the catch point, where I look at Colston Loveland more athletic at the catch point, where he can elevate with that the long angular linear body that he has, and the catch radius, like, he can make those catches away from his frame and everything. This is my thing. I tell everybody, if you put Colston Loveland in Penn State, Colston Loveland's 1,400 yard receiver. Mm-hmm. You put Tyler Warren in Michigan, we never hear his name called. because they can't get the ball. You couldn't get the ball to a guy who was wide open. Like, if you couldn't get the ball to a guy who's wide open, winning his routes, all that type of stuff like that, how are you going to get the ball to a guy who isn't the most fluid route runner and man beater? He lived and thrived off of manufactured touches and schemed up isolated opportunities. Again, I learned, Keith, again, if you're an evaluator, been doing this for years, you just learn from your misses. I've been in that situation. I'm like, man, he's so versatile. The NFL is definitely going to use this guy like that. He gets to the league, they tell him to run standard stuff. He doesn't really work out. I'm not banking that the NFL is going to do the best for Tyler Warren. I'm just not banking on that because I've seen the NFL screw up too many times. So that's my biggest thing. I know a guy that translates so much better to an NFL passing offense. Because I'm going to tell you what Colston Loveland reminds me of, Keith. He reminds me of Travis Kelce. He blocks like Travis Kelce, where it's not the best strength and strain at the point of attack. He knows how to get in the way, but that potential mismatch that he is as a pass catcher, it supersedes everything else.
Yep, no, I agree 100%. With DP, let's talk about this, man. I believe that they're clear tier 1 tight end, right? Let's get into tier 2, right? Like those guys that sit at the top of tier 2, who you can see potentially go to back end in the first round or the top of the second round. Let's get into those prospects coming up next.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL for half off of your first year. Tier 2 tight ends in the 2025 NFL Draft. Let's go through the rankings real quick since we had that conversation about tight end 1. At number 1, Keith has Colston Loveland out of Michigan. Keith has Tyler Warren out of Penn State at number 2. He has Elijah Royo from Miami at number 3. He has Mason Taylor from LSU at number 4 and Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green at number 5. It's basically the exact same top 5. I have Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren, Royo, Mason Taylor, and Harold Fannin. And Keith, you talk about those guys that could potentially go top of the second round, maybe late first. I think top of the second round. I think we might get a run in round 2, especially day 2, up for the tight ends. Keith, I look at Elijah Royo, and for me, Keith, I think this dude can be an absolute menace in the passing game. He gets to the NFL level. I think he came in with 6'4", 250 at the Senior Bowl, things like that. Most uncoverable guy there. There was nobody else that, like, there was no answer for like Elijah Royo, which led to questions like, Mario Cristobal, why didn't y'all let him cook more often than that offense? I get the RPO stuff, but man, that was the game changer for you, was getting Elijah Royo going. The speed, the pass catching ability, the route running. And we saw that firsthand in Mobile, Keith. Talk to the people. Like, why do you feel like he is probably the next tight end off the board and potentially at the top of the second round?
Yeah, you talked about it. It's the athletic ability, right? And I don't know. I have to check in 100% because I know he didn't test at the combine. I know they don't have any measurements on the combine. And then I can't remember what Miami's pro day if he was injured and didn't test there neither.
I think he caught passes. I don't think he tested.
He tested, yeah. So maybe he's just not doing it. Well, at this point,
I think he was battling like a hamstring. I think he was battling some type of injury.
Okay. Yeah, and that makes sense, right? It just doesn't have any testing results. But I say the athletic ability for him also. Guy's such a fluid mover, explosive, can win the one-on-ones, can dominate in the middle of the field. I think you can line him up at wide receiver, right? Like, you can do, if you're one of those versatile alignment offensive coordinators that doesn't believe in stagnant sets and things like that and throwing different looks at defenses, he's your guy, right? Because I think he can do all of those things. And I agree with you that depending on the situation, he's a guy that you sit there and say, you know what? this guy's NFL career is probably going to be better than his college career. He goes to the right spot in the right situation. I like Elijah a lot. That I'm closer to putting him in the bucket of that tier 1 than I am the tier 2 bucket. Because I think he's that close of a prospect. And when you watch, like you said, what he was able to do at the Senior Bowl, and we've seen in the past, DP, it hasn't been tight ends as much, right? But things at those in-person live events translate, right? Because at the end of the day, it's just football, and you're watching these guys move. And Elijah Arroyo's ability to dominate almost every rep translates, like, and because like you said, that's where we discovered the Tank Dells and all of these other guys, is that running routes, one-on-ones, getting open, it always translates. Like, that's something that you can pick up and place in a different spot. And Elijah Arroyo definitely can do that.
No, 100%. The Tank Dells, Lad McConkey stamping himself as you should have went round 1. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Lad, stamped himself. Ricky Pearsall probably earned that round 1 pick from the Niners down in Mobile because he had a good week. We've seen guys go down to Mobile and absolutely torch the competition and stand out amongst their counterparts. And not to get lost in this, Mason Taylor as our 4, I think he's the guy in that probably, if Elijah Arroyo's like fringe that tier 1 bucket, Mason Taylor starts the tier 2 bucket. Like that second round, I think my comp for him was Mark Andrews. I think similar body types, athletic profiles, but the nuance and understanding of space, how to win, especially against zone coverages, how to run not just shallow but deep and intermediate routes. Good, strong hands, like guys that don't really drop. I don't get me wrong, not Mason, but Mark Andrews had the drop in the playoffs, but that is it normal for Mark Andrews. Like, he catches, he's been so reliable, right? But I think both of them were always slept on as athletes when they get vertical. And I think Mason Taylor. I was on a podcast with my guy Taylor Kyles last week, and he asked, like, man, is there a tight end on day 2 of the draft do you think that the Patriots should be looking at? I said, yeah, Mason Taylor. I think you put Mason Taylor in that offense to grow with what you're building with Drake May. I said, yeah, that's the type of guy. I think Mason Taylor could be a good starting tight end in the NFL.
You know who I just thought about too, DP, that might even be a good athletic comp too for him. And this guy was, before injuries, was on a really like good trajectory. Hunter Henry.
I think they have in New England, which is crazy.
Yeah, yep. I think they're very, very similar as far as they kind of do it all guys. It's not guys that just gonna win with straight athleticism, but you see the instincts, the run after the catch ability. They are assets in the run game, right? Because they're willing to block and things like that. So I was thinking about just well-rounded tight ends, because that's what Mason Taylor is. You're getting a well-rounded tight end that could do a little bit of everything at a consistent B+ level, right? And that's special in his own right, to know that, we talk about 3-down running backs, but he's a 3-down tight end. You don't have to take him off the field because he can do it all.
10-12 year vet that's going to get it done. And I think because he's not a guy that wins solely off of athleticism, he wins with instincts and spacing and feel for the game. Like, yeah, you see him getting later in his career. I always go back to it, man. Jason Witten shouldn't have been separating from anybody the last 2 years of his career, but he was doing it. Why? Because he had that feel, that nuance, the details of winning the position. It didn't really matter. It's like, yeah, that linebacker is a 25-year-old running a 4.4. Jason Witten was like, I don't really care. Like, you know what I mean? I'm gonna set you up. I'm gonna rock you, and I'm gonna break and I'm gonna get open. I may not be open long because you're gonna be able to recover, but if the quarterback get it to me on time, first down. And I think that's why I look at Mason Taylor like, this is a guy that can play 10, probably 12 years in the league. He's a willing blocker. I think he talked about the fact of how him and his dad, the pedigree, right? I think Mike Tomlin, when he was on, was it the Pivot podcast, he talked about, like, when I'm scouting guys, I care about stuff like pedigree. The pedigree, the NFL bloodlines is there from his Hall of Fame father, Jason Taylor. And I think they talked about him improving even as a run blocker, being more physical and stronger. So I absolutely, Keith, when I look at the situation, I just say, man, like, sign me up for it. Harold Fannin Jr., I think, is in that tier 2 bucket as well. And he's going to be that guy that's going to probably live more as an H-back than the inline number 1 tight end. But he's the guy that the Jonnu Smiths, where you can give him the jet motion, the jet sweep stuff, the pop pass, the motion him out in the space, give him a quick smoke screen, and just get the ball in Harold Fannon's hands, because he is a good athlete, but he's physical. I think he's a former either linebacker or defensive end. Like coming out of the house, and you see that too. Like he wants to stiff arm guys, he wants to run through you. He's a guy that I think in a passing attack, if you have, I'm not gonna lie, the team that I think that should absolutely be in on him should be the Chicago Bears, day 2. Right? You got Cole Kmet, who will be your number 1 inline guy, block, do all that, do all the dirty work. Let me get that in that 12 personnel with Caleb after you probably draft. I mean, my hope is that they get Genty at 10, but if the Raiders said, oops, not happening, then you got to, wait and probably get Caleb Johnson or somebody else on, 3rd round. But I think with what they have in Chicago, I think Harold Fannin would be a great fit in that Chicago Bears offense with Ben Johnson calling plays. We saw what he was able to do with Sam Laporta. Just move, just move our guy Harold Fannin around, get him in space. He's a good route runner too. I don't think people realize, like, he's a pretty good route runner. He can win versus one-on-one. You get him isolated to against some safeties and backers. Yeah, like that should be probably your first read. Like if Caleb sees we motion Harold Fannin out, or whoever the quarterback is, you see him motion out, and it's a linebacker, I'm like, yeah, it might be my first read. I'm gonna get the ball to Harold Fannin. I think those are the top 2 guys in that tier 2 bucket, man. And I think both of them going to be really good pros in the next level.
Yeah, DP, I like that. Well, let's do this, man. Let's keep this train rolling. We're on to the tier 3 tight ends, right? The guys that we'll say, not that nobody's talking about, right, but that could potentially be afterthoughts, but have an opportunity to be real impact players if drafted to your team. We're going to talk about those guys coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 back in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's right, you heard me correctly. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who you believe will be cutting down the nets when it's all said and done. Stay in the action with tournament games happening almost every day. There's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is safe, simple, and super easy to use. And when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. To join today, visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Again, to join today, go and visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Let's continue the tier 3 conversation, but we won't continue the top 10 rankings. Keith has Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon at number 6. At number 7, he has Gunnar Helm out of Texas. At number 8, he has Jake Brending Stool out of Clemson. At number 9, he has Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame. And at number 10, he has Benjamin Urorsik, a name that we haven't seen much of, from Georgia, at his 10th spot. For me, at number 6, I have Jake Brending Stool from Clemson. At number 7, I have Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame. At number 8, I have Thomas Fedone II from Nebraska. At number 9, I have Terrence Ferguson. At number 10, I have Gunnar Helm. Keith, Mitchell Evans is a guy I think is going to be a long-term pro tight end 2 for a team. Teams that I think we were, the phrase, Keith, this history always repeats itself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Like, back in the days, our parents were wearing starter jackets and stuff like that. Now that came back. The high top fade was there, then it went away, then it came back. We ran the ball. That's when we were a proper country, Keith, when we idolized the run game. All right.
Uh-huh.
And then we transitioned to pass happy, deep ball stuff. But since 2019 and teams start going to that too high safety look, the yards per attempt went from 11 to 12 to about 7.5. So defenses are taking away that deep ball, and I think history is repeating itself, and teams are going to get back into that 12 personnel. Let's run the ball, get 2 tight ends on the field. And then when you think back to, I'll never forget watching, I think it was a playoff game. It was the Steelers-Patriots. The Patriots came out, Tom Brady and those guys, Chris Hogan, all of them, they came out in 12. So it came out standard base. I think James Harrison was on the edge. Tom Brady got to the line, saw what they were in and said, and called Jordan, went full empty. The Steelers didn't know what to do. They were like, we are not set in a defense for this. And they got like a 40-yard play up the seam to Chris Hogan because they had a linebacker on him. And it's like, I think teams are going to get back to that. And I think Mitchell Evans is one of those tight ends. He blocks well. I think he's a solid athlete. He's not like an elite guy. He's got a good get off the line, can run routes, but also really good ball skills with the ball in the air. Sees it well, tracks it well, can go up and make plays, make those kind of contested catches, man. I think he's just going to be a solid pro at the next level that somebody's going to probably get top of the 4th round, Keith.
Yeah, no, I that's why I see him. And you've seen on the playoff run, right, just how he can be important part to college offense. But then you take and it's kind of what you talked about in not comparing him to Jason Witten, but, just those guys that find a way to just make a couple plays, right? And that's what I see for him. He's a make a couple plays type of guy. And I like the fact that you said, tight end 2, but tight end 2 in a heavy 12 personnel or 22, whatever you want to do, right? In a heavy run scheme and, that split moment second of separating from a second level defender, whether that be a linebacker or something like that, right? Mitchell Evans can get the job done. I want to talk about Terrence Ferguson, DP, because I don't think we've talked about him. And get your thoughts, because I think I had him at 6 or 7 and you had him at 9. Which is not that far off, right? But just wanted to talk about him overall. And how you feel about Terrence Ferguson.
Oh man, I like Terrence. I think I think we talked about it, a while back, for our new listeners, get my thoughts on him. I like him. He showcased at the Senior Bowl. The Senior Bowl was so big for him, showcasing his ability to run routes and separate one-on-one, where he wasn't able to. It was kind of schematically favorable at Oregon. They kind of did a lot of shallow stuff. Things just scheme him open, and it was like it left you to think maybe he can't get open one-on-one. But at the Senior Bowl, he showcased I can run some routes. I'm pretty solid in that regard. I think the blocking is a big issue for him, and just I want to see him play bigger at the catch point. He's got the frame, the arm length, the athletic ability. It's like for me, it's like play bigger at the catch point because if I don't feel comfortable with you coming down with contested catches, it limits in the red zone, the high red. I get you matched up on a guy like, man, like that's my tight end. I can throw that 50-50 ball. Can you come down with those consistently? His contested catch percentage was not great in 2024. So it really kind of throughout his career. I just want to see him get stronger, in that regard. So that's why I had him a little bit lower, than I think, I had him at 9. I had him behind Mitchell Evans, behind Thomas Fedone. And can I tell you, man, I think I said it before. I'm going to say it again. Thomas Fedone is like the perfect developmental day 3 potential starting tight end. Like this is a guy that if you have your starter, you're established, things like that. Yeah, I'm drafting Thomas Fedone because I think this is a guy that it's crazy because it's a lot of that in this class at the tight end spot. Bryson Nesbitt, Colston Loveland, Terrence, Ferguson, a lot of tall, linear frames, lean guys. I just need him to change his pads. Like his pads, they bother me. Like why he's running, it's like shaking. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, these are not secure. Get some smaller pads. Let you be a little bit more aerodynamic so you can cut through the wind a little bit. But the pads are like, it just reminds me of that guy that got to practice late at spring training in high school, got the worst pads out of everybody because you came late. Yep. So, you should have been here on time, man. We got the good pads. So, but I think he's a guy that showcases effort in the run game. He can run routes. He's athletic, make those acrobatic contested catches. And I just think there's a lot of development that you can get there, especially if you bulk him up just a little bit to be able to handle some of the edge work on blocking on the edges in the NFL. And I look at this dude, I said, man, like I really like what he brings to the table. I think I gave him a top of the 4th round, early day 3 type of grade. And then my guy, Keith, Jake Brending Stool to me is like, that's another guy that's like blocking. And found out some stuff when it came down to when I was at the pro day at Clemson. They don't really teach that. So like it would like people look at like, man, he doesn't block well. It's like, well, he's not really taught to. They want him to be the pass catcher. The tight ends coach, when I was told, does not actually work on that enough with the tight ends and things like that. And for him being kind of a pseudo big flex tight end, that big slot receiver type, his speed, he's so smooth, man. At 6'5", 6'6", 240. Like he runs routes incredibly well. He can snap and break. He can create separation. A guy that can win against zone. I think this is one. And then the part for me is like, he's gonna come in as like a tight end too as well. But the seam work, like his burst up the seam on seam concepts, yeah, off of play action, like he's one of those guys that you want to have in your offense. I really think that getting him in the offense and getting him coached up on blocking, I think you're going to see a natural jump with him because it's not something that they was taught at Clemson.
Yeah, DP. Listen, that was the tight ends, man. We went through all 10 of them. Our top our list, right, was pretty much chalk. We went the same thing, and then just a couple rankings on the back end of it. But I think it was more the tier 3 guys, and I think that's more so how you look at the assets and deficiencies. But for the most part, we pretty much have the same tight end group, right? Like the top 10 guys, and I think we kind of fell in line with that. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Every listener is greatly appreciated here. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at the Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. On tomorrow's show, we're going to keep the top 10 rankings going right now. Guys, let's get into ranking the interior defensive line group. I remember last week we ranked corner, safety, running back, and he said, listen, the running back class is deep, and this was stressful, but it was a good stressful situation. The interior defensive line group is loaded. So let's rank those. Let's see where we come in on our top 10 interior defensive line. Mason Graham, Walter Nolan, those guys who comes inside our top 10. That'll be on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.